For this experiment, you're going to need food coloring, an empty clear bottle, cooking oil, and some water. Step 1, add water to the bottle. Do not fill it more than about a third of the way full. Next, add a few drops of food coloring and observe what happens. You will see the food coloring slowly drifting throughout the water and spreading. This process is called diffusion. After the food coloring has dispersed and dyed the water, add a small amount of the cooking oil to the bottle. Observe what happens. Unlike the food dye, which dispersed throughout the water, the oil is sitting on top and just floating there. What is going on here? Density is how much stuff is packed into a given amount of space. The more stuff packed into the same amount of space something is, the more dense it is. Matter is made of molecules. Water is more dense than oil, so water has more molecules in the same amount of space or same volume than oil does. The oil floats on top of the water because it is less dense. If you were to do something like drop a stone, which is more dense than water, into the water, it would sink. When we gently swirled the food dye in the water, it dispersed throughout the rest of the water, turning the water blue. However, if we gently shake the water and oil back and forth, we can see the oil riding as a layer on top of the water, continuing to float. When we shake the bottle vigorously, the oil does get mixed throughout the water, temporarily. Over time, the oil will float back to the surface because of its lesser density, and you will once again have two layers, the water and the oil. Now, if we add some more food coloring to the top of this, we notice it sinks down through the oil into the water. This is not surprising because the food coloring is water-based, and as we discussed, water is more dense than the oil and will sink down below it. As the food coloring sinks to the oil, it moves down in contained little blobs. When it hits the water, it disperses and spreads out throughout. Why is the food coloring acting different in oil than in water? Water is a molecule made up of one oxygen and two hydrogen atoms. Because of the way the oxygen and hydrogen atoms stick together, this molecule is polar. It has a positive side and a negative side. When you have a polar molecule, like charges will repel, opposite charges will attract to each other. The cooking oil is non-polar molecules. Because of this difference in polar and non-polar molecules, oil and water will not mix. When we shake the water and oil together, the oil is temporarily suspended in the water as small droplets. These droplets slowly float back to the surface of the water as it settles. Since water is polar and oil is not, the water-based food coloring will not disperse in the oil, but the surface tension of it will keep it together as a small blob as it floats down through the oil. Some of the food coloring droplets get coated in oil and float for a moment at the boundary between the water and the oil. When they get heavy enough, they will burst and sink down through the water, dispersing. The food coloring and the water are both polar, so they can dissolve and disperse within each other. I'd like to thank everyone for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.